First, we'll have a reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. Thank you. No, not this one. This chapter is entitled The Buddha Temple, Part 2. So at this point, Prabhupada is in Krishna Balaram Mandir, and the temple is just opening. Is it just opened, or is it just about to be opened? About to be opened. Touring the grounds, Prabhupada walked into the sunken courtyard, its marble floor clean and dazzling. There was no rented. This was no rented house in America, something built for another purpose. It was a temple, like the temples in Vaikuntha described in Srimad Bhagavatam. I think it surpasses all the temples in India. Prabhupada stood smiling before the tamal tree, its venerable branches spread throughout the one corner of the courtyard, and he recounted how there had been a discussion of cutting it down, and he had prevented it. Tamal trees are associated with the pastime of Srimati Radharani and are very rare. In Vrindavan, there were perhaps only 3, one here, one at Sevakunj, and one in the courtyard of Radha Damodar temple. The tamal tree was growing so luxuriantly, Prabhupada said, indicated that devotees were performing genuine bhakti. They say that also about Tulsi, that Tulsi grows with devotion. Convinced that the temple was actually ready, Prabhupada entered his residence just between the temple and the guest house. Many details demanded his attention, and many visiting disciples were present. Thus, in Ramanreti, in a place where there was no temple, a pure devotee desired, let there be a temple and seva devotional service. And what had once been an empty lot was now a place of pilgrimage. Such is the power of the desires of the pure devotee. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So we start a new chapter tomorrow. Uniting two worlds. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 16. Chapter is entitled King Chitraketu Meets the Lord. Text 41, 42, 41. Vishama Matir Na Yatra Nrinam. Vishama Matir Na Yatra Nrinam. Tvam Aham Iti Mama Taveti Cha Yad Anyatra. Tvam Aham Iti Mama Taveti Cha Yad Anyatra. Vishamadiya Rachito Ya. Vishamadiya Rachito Ya. Sa Hi Havishuddha Kshayishnur Adharma Bahula. Sahya Vishuddha Kshayishnur Adharma Bahula. Vishamatirna Yatra Nrinam. Tvam Aham Iti Mama Taveti Chayadan Yatra. Vishamadiya Rachito Ya. Sahya Vishuddha Kshayishnur Adharma Bahula. Vishamatirna Yatra Nrinam. Tam Aham Iti Mama Taveti Chayadan Yatra. Vishamadiya Rachito Ya. Sahya Vishuddha Kshayushnura Dharma Bahula. Please chant. Vishama, unequal. Your religion, my religion, your belief, my belief. Mati, consciousness. Na, not. Yatra, in which. Nrinam, of human society. Tvam, you. Aham, I. Iti, thus. Mama, my. Tava, your. Iti, thus. Cha, also. Yat, which. And yatra, elsewhere. In religious systems other than Bhagavad Dharma. Vishamadiya, by this unequal intelligence. Rachita, made. Ya, that which. Sa, that system of religion. He, indeed. Avishuddha, not pure. Shayishnu, temporary. Dharma Bahula, full of irreligion. Translation, being full of contradictions, all forms of religion but Bhagavad Dharma work under conceptions of future results and distinctions of you and I and yours and mine. The followers of Srimad Bhagavatam have no such consciousness. They are all Krishna conscious, thinking that they are Krishna's and Krishna is theirs. There are other low-class religious systems which are contemplated for the killing of enemies or the gain of mystic power. But such religious systems, being full of passion and envy, are impure and temporary. Because they are full of envy, they are full of irreligion. Please repeat, being full of contradictions, all forms of religion, but Bhagavad Dharma, work under conceptions of future results, and distinctions of you and I and yours and mine. The followers of Srimad Bhagavatam have no such consciousness. They are all Krishna conscious, thinking that they are Krishna's and Krishna is theirs. There are other low-class religious systems which are contemplated for the killing of enemies or the gain of mystic power. But such religious systems, being full of passion and envy, are impure and temporary. Because they are full of envy, they are full of irreligion. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Bhagavad Dharma has no contradictions. Conceptions of your religion and my religion are completely absent from Bhagavad Dharma. Bhagavad Dharma means following the orders given by the Supreme Lord Bhagavan as stated in Bhagavad Gita, Sarva Dharma Parityaja Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja. God is one and God is for everyone. Therefore, everyone must surrender to God. That is the pure conception of religion. Whatever God orders constitutes religion. Dharman tu Bhagavat Shakshad Bhagavat Panitam. In Bhagavad Dharma, there is no question of what you believe and what I believe. Everyone must believe in the Supreme Lord and carry out his orders. Anukulyena Krishna Anushilanam. Whatever Krishna says, whatever God says, should be directly carried out. That is Dharma, religion. If one is actually Krishna conscious, he cannot have any enemies. Since his only engagement is to induce others to surrender to Krishna or God, how can he have enemies? If one advocates the Hindu religion, the Muslim religion, the Christian religion, this religion, or that religion, there will be conflicts. History shows that the followers of the religious systems, without a clear conception of God, have fought with one another. There are many instances of this in human history, but systems of religion that do not concentrate upon service to the Supreme are temporary and cannot last for long because they are full of envy. There are many activities directed against such religious systems, and therefore one must give up the idea of my belief in your belief. Everyone should believe in God and surrender unto Him. That is Bhagavad Dharma. Bhagavad Dharma is not a concocted sectarian belief, for it entails research to find how everything is connected with Krishna. Isavasamidam sarvam. According to the Vedic injunction, sarvam kalvidam Brahma. Brahma, the Supreme, is present in everything. Bhagavad Dharma captures this presence of the Supreme. Bhagavad Dharma does not consider everything in the world to be false, because everything emanates from the Supreme. Nothing can be false. Everything has some use in the service of the Supreme. For example, we are now dictating into a microphone and recording it on a dictating machine. And thus, we are finding how the machine can be connected to the Supreme Brahman. Since we are using this machine in the service of the Lord, it is Brahman. This is the meaning of Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. Everything is Brahman because everything can be used for the service of the Supreme Lord. Nothing is mithya, false, everything is factual. Bhagavad Dharma is called Sarvat Krishna, the best of all religious systems, because those who follow Bhagavad Dharma are not envious of anyone. Pure Bhagavats, pure devotees invite everyone without envy to join the Krishna conscience movement. A devotee is therefore exactly like the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Suridam Sarvabhutanam. He is a friend of all living entities. Therefore, this is the best of all religious systems, whereas so-called religions are meant for a particular type of person who believes in a particular way. Such discrimination has no place in Krishna consciousness or Bhagavad Dharma. If we scrutinize the religious systems meant for worship of demigods or anyone else but the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we will find that they are full of envy and therefore impure. Om Gyanantimanandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurmilitam Yana Tasmai Shigurave Namaha Bakam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Lagate Grimya Kripatamam Vande Shigrim Dinataranam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Translation again. Being full of contradictions, all forms of religion but Bhagavad Dharma work under conceptions of fruitive results and distinctions of you and I and yours and mine. The followers of Srimad Bhagavatam have no such consciousness. They are all Krishna conscious, thinking that they are Krishna's and Krishna is theirs. There are other low-class religious systems which are contemplated for the killing of enemies or the gain of mystic power, but such religious systems, being full of passion and envy, are impure and temporary because they are full of envy. They are full of irreligion. So how can a religious system be full of envy? Anybody? Yes.
Based on some motives, personal motives and desires. And if I do not get it, then there would be an element of envy, perhaps, that, oh, someone has the power but not giving it to me, or someone is enjoying and not letting me enjoy.
Yeah. So in the lower modes, so-called religion, this is referred to in first canto of Bhagavatam, Dharma. It's called Kaitava Dharma, or cheating religion. So cheating religion means that we're simply trying to strike up some kind of deal with God, that I do this and you do that. And quite often people try to strike up these deals, and even if they don't always keep their part of the bargain. There was one man he lived in Leicester, and he used to do some, I think it was worship of Lord Shiva to get a wife. And there was one very beautiful woman he wanted as his wife, and he got the woman as his wife. And because he had to do so much puja every day, then he had no time to spend with his wife practically. But he knew that if he stopped, then he would lose her. I don't know how it ended up, but that was his worry anyway. So even he got what he wanted, but he couldn't necessarily be happy with it. Also, another aspect of envy would be, distinguishing between one person's belief in another, and then, sometimes they have this thing that you have to accept our religion or we will kill you. So how is that? Being Suridam Sarabhutanam, the friend of everyone, that's being an enemy. Either you have to accept what I say. So where's the love? It's supposed to be about love. So if someone has to accept at the end of a sword or a gunpoint, then people will accept. Therefore, when people are forced to accept because of some threat or some financial need, just like we were in Nepal in 1998, and we're going to up the Gandaki to get shallograms, and we were asking, or in Pokhara where we stayed, we asked the hotel owner, was he Hindu? And he said, actually, well, he was Christian for a little while. He says, but he went back to Hindu. And I said, so what made you go towards being a Christian? He says, because they offered us a job. He said, if you become a Christian, we'll give you a job. I said, does that happen often? He said, yeah. Of course, this can happen in any religion. We're not putting down Christians for this. We're just saying this is some temporary situation. So because he was offered a job, then he accepted that religion. But when the job was over, then he didn't continue with it. He had no intention. But Bhagavad Dharma is not like that. Bhagavad Dharma is Sanatan Dharma. It's the eternal function of the Lord, of the soul. And Bhagavad Dharma means that everything we do is in relation to Bhagavat, the Supreme Lord Bhagavan. Accepting that he's the proprietor of everything, the well-wishing friend of everyone, and the Lord, the controller, the Supreme Ishvara. Now, Prabhupada often gives the example that in the sky we may see the sun, but it's not that if you're in one country it's a different sun. It's not like you're in America, you're seeing an American sun, or you're in Scotland, you're seeing the Scottish sun, or India seeing the Indian sun. It's the same sun, even if you give it a different name. It's the same with the moon. So religious principles are not subject to man-made morals. Sometimes people think, well, religion was just concocted by men to give some moral guidance. And you could see why they would conclude that, because for many people, they don't experience anything other than some moral guidance from it. And often they see hypocrisy because they see even the moral guidance which is there, nobody's really following it. I used to go to a Catholic church when I was young, brought up like that, and we had a very interesting priest. He wasn't your standard priest, he was quite honest. And he came to visit the house once, and he said to my mother, I haven't seen you at church for a while. And she says, no, I feel like a hypocrite. No, it wasn't. She said, yeah, I just get fed up seeing people, hovering around the priest, trying to curry favors. They're just hypocrites because she knows what they're like. They're trying to be all holier than thou when they're in church, but outside, their behavior doesn't match. And he said, the old saying, the closer to the altar, the bigger the hypocrite. He said, look at me. So basically he was saying he's the biggest hypocrite, which I thought was about the most humble or honest thing that anyone had said in that regard. And this is a fact because it's the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. We'll find that everywhere, but we can't hold that against everybody because we're guilty of it ourselves. We've got enough to go on with in our own life. If we keep on picking at everyone else's faults, then what happens is we just collect all these faults and we possess them ourselves. Whereas when we see the good in people, despite the bad, Srila Prabhupada was so expert at that, even though we just read the other day, he said his service was to criticize his disciples. But Prabhupada could see the good in everyone, even other people couldn't see that. So by seeing the good in others, you cultivate the good in yourself. And you also cultivate the good in them. It makes for good relations. But when people think in terms of I, me, and mine, then they're cultivating an illusion. And Bhagavad Dharma is meant for dispelling that illusion, to waking up to see who is the real proprietor. Unless we accept that whatever is in our possession really belongs to the Supreme Lord, then we're basically thieves. And in due course of time, whatever we think we have gained will be left behind. I watched Srila Prabhupada giving an interview in Australia, and he was kind of dispelling this bodily conception, national conception. He says, when we come into this world, we have nothing. He says, this world was existing before we came into it. It will be existing when we leave. But meanwhile, we come in here and we say, this is mine, this is yours, and then we fight over things. So this is the present human society. And we fight over it. And if you look at the wars which happened 100 years ago, like First World War, where is everybody now that was fighting over that? There's nobody on the planet now that was around then, but it was such an important fight at that time. So this is the effect of karma. And due to ignorance, then the living entities are going through this time and time again, and that's why they don't learn. I remember I had a cousin who was a good bit older than me, and he had one famous poster in his bedroom. His bedroom is basically a walk-in cupboard because in the tenements in Glasgow in those days, they didn't have so many rooms, but he wanted his privacy. He was a young hippie. And he had a poster on the wall, and it showed you someone being killed in action, and underneath it said, why? And the reason why is because we're not learning. People are thinking, oh, well, why is there a war now? We think we'd have learned from that, like this Ukraine-Russian war. We think, why is it there? We should have learned from that. And of course, we should have learned. But if we're going to keep on doing the same thing, then we haven't learned. History repeats itself. If we do the same thing, was Einstein said that insanity means to do the same thing over and over and expect a different result. So nobody's activities have changed. They're in the mode of ignorance. Ignorance means that they're ignoring the law of karma, and that there is such a law, and that whatever you do, it does have an effect on you personally, nationally, globally. So the Krishna consciousness movement is meant to bring auspiciousness. We're not here to fault find and point the finger. We're here to bring auspiciousness into the lives of people simply by the chanting of Hare Krishna and by the offering of vegetarian foodstuffs acceptable to the Lord. It becomes prasadam. Even this one thing alone, Prabhupada said, if everyone becomes vegetarian, even the weather will get better. Because the slaughter of animals, innocent animals, and particularly the cows, it brings so much inauspiciousness to the planet. And as long as people don't listen to this, they're just going to have to bear the result. Accept it or don't accept it. That is the law of nature. And there's this false propaganda that cows are causing so much harm to the environment by methane. But there's two things there which they're forgetting, is that they're feeding them stuff which is creating the methane. They don't have to feed them the junk, which they do. It's just like us. Eat certain food stuff, you're going to have a lot of wind. It's called apana, right? The downward moving wind. So therefore, if you don't want that, then you don't eat certain foodstuffs. But they're feeding them and saying, "Oh, it's the cows. Look, they're to blame. Let's kill them." But they feed them the proper stuff and put the cows in a place where the land is barren, and they'll make it fertile. They'll increase the foliage of the planet. Everything they do brings auspiciousness to the planet. They're not a burden. We're the burden. They can relieve the burden. So in some small way, that's something we hope to do at Krishna Bhavan. ISKCON is already doing it throughout the world. They're showing examples of cow protection. And this is part of Bhagavad Dharma, protection of the cows. Go Brahmana Hitayacha. Lord, the cows are very dear to the Lord, even more so than the Brahmins. So my belief, your belief, then this creates a separation. We have to understand that God is one. We may have different names for God, and we may have different levels of understanding. But that doesn't mean to say that one level is the absolute and there's nothing beyond that. Many religions believe that the Lord is formless, and that we can agree on, yes, but he's also form. Tadejati, Tadnajati, Tajari, Tadvantake, Tadaran. No, let's see. What's that verse? Supreme Lord walks and does not walk. Is that right? Tadejati, Tadnajati, Tajari, Tadvantake. No, it's not that one. Anyway, I forget the Sanskrit, but the English is the Supreme Lord walks and does not walk. He's far away, but he's very near as well. He's within everything, and yet he's outside of everything. It's that one, isn't it? Tadantarasya Sarvasya Tadu Sarvasya Shabaya Taha. So he has form. He walks, but he does not walk. Means he is form, but he also has formlessness. It's like the sun planet has form, and then the impersonal aspect is the sun's rays. He is within everything, and yet he's outside of everything. So he's within the creation. Everything rests on me as pearls strung on a thread. You have a beautiful pearl necklace, but if you just take that thread away, then it's chaos. They're all over the place. You can't see it. If someone walks around with like a handful of pearls trying to look opulent, you'll just think, just get a string on it, will you? Make it used properly. So Krishna's, we don't see it, but Krishna's permeating everything, holding it all together. And as he said, if I were not to, there's no duty ascribed to me. He has no prescribed duty. Who's going to prescribe Krishna any duty? Who can say? That would be Krishna then, wouldn't it? That would be God. So there's no duty ascribed to Krishna. But he says, if I did not perform duties, if he did not maintain things, the whole world would be put into ruination. So just see, Krishna is so non-envious that even the living entity is set up for those who are envious of Krishna, who want to enjoy separate from him. Then he says, okay, I'll maintain it for you. This is Krishna's love. Even though people are hating Krishna, he still loves them. He's far away, but he's very near as well. So in his own abode in Goloka Vrindavan, Krishna is there, but he's also within the heart as a super soul, Paramatma, Antaryami. So the Lord never leaves us. That's mentioned in the Sutasvatara Upanishad, that there's two birds sitting on the tree. One is enjoying the fruits, and the other one is a witness. And the witness is just, he's not interfering. But as soon as the bird turns to him, then Krishna makes arrangements. Krishna will allow us to do what we want to do, but he doesn't always sanction it. It's not that he agrees with it or authorizes it. So when people blame God, for something that some human did, then it's not the case. where we would draw the line, and we say, okay, why would God allow this? Well, why does God allow you to commit the sins you commit? Okay, maybe it's not on the same scale, but who decides? Who draws the line? If you want to know what God thinks, then we have to follow everything that God says. Not that we just say, well, this is too bad, I'll do this, but I won't do that, and those people go to jail, but I'm still allowed to go free. So actually, Durgadam, the material world is known as the prison house of Maya. Durgadam, Shishikodantai Mapisha Shikija. So this material body is like a prison in itself. It has so many limitations. Some look on the soul as amazing, some hear of him as amazing, some describe him as amazing, and while others, even after hearing about him, still cannot understand. So the soul is amazing, but in our illusion, we're just accepting this very confined, restricted, constricted medium of material body in the material world, thinking this is normal. We are so conditioned to that. Prabhupada explains that Maya means that which is not, that we take our suffering to be enjoyment, just like the camel chewing on the thorns. Thinks, oh, these thorns are very juicy, very nice. And it's tasting its own blood. This is what it's doing. So this is compared to the person who works hard all day, spending their blood, and then at night they spend their blood by passing semen. Prabhupada explains that in the Bhagavatam. And they think this is happiness, but all the while they're losing their energy. So our energy is meant to be used in Krishna's service, and when we do that, we actually have an unusual situation. Usually in the material world, when you give something, you end up with less. But in spiritual life, you give something, you end up with more. So I remember one devotee, Tribhuvanath. He's a very wonderful devotee, enthusiasm personified, such an amazing person. And he was inexhaustible. Although sometimes there were some interesting stories of him falling asleep in different places. One time he was driving a bus, like a single-decker bus, down the motorway. And the police were behind him with flashing lights, and they were trying to get him pull over because he was asleep. And they were, the siren, the lights, all sorts of things. They attempted to pull him in. And they were extremely angry. But by the time they stopped him, which was many minutes later, it was like 10, 15 minutes later or something, they thought, this person is, there's something divine going on here. So they pulled him in and they said, we were going to do you for dangerous driving, but we think somebody up there must be looking after you. We've never seen anything like it. So please stop and take rest. But no, it's not that we should think, okay, that's okay, I'll just fall asleep when I'm driving and Krishna will take care of the car. Devotees have been killed in accidents. We shouldn't be thinking it's okay. This is something which happened also in Scotland many years ago. On the way back from the manor, one group of devotees left the Edinburgh temple back in the 70s, went to visit the manor on the way back up. Driver fell asleep and there was no one awake to keep him awake, and they crashed and one person died. So therefore it's so important. Devotees are so rare. We have to make sure we don't put ourselves in such a situation. But anyway, Tribhuvanath, just back to the point, was that there was one devotee who was trying to imitate him, and he said, don't try to imitate me, I'm running on a different energy. So for many years he was so enthusiastic and he was getting the reciprocation. But sometimes advanced devotees, they won't reveal because they're not looking for some kind of cheap following. If Prabhupada was just to say, I'm such and such in the spiritual world, then devotees would make cheap of it. Or they start comparing it. Like one devotee said to Prabhupada that I would like to be such and such in the spiritual world. And Prabhupada says, first deserve, then desire. So this is the important thing. Work now, samadhi later. And we see that with even here, we had one wonderful devotee, Mother Ratna Ranjini, disciple of Srila Prabhupada. We hardly noticed her, but when she got cancer and she was unable to do service, it took 5 devotees to cover her service and she always got her rounds done, and she was always had a great service attitude. She was never freaking out. She wasn't like, oh, I'm exhausted or I'm fried, because she accepted herself as a servant and she kept herself engaged 24 hours a day. And this is one of the symptoms of a pure devotee, that a pure devotee never likes to remain idle. It's not like, oh, I just want some time myself to space out, or I want nothing to do. Idle mind is the devil's workshop. We want to keep ourselves engaged. And of course, that doesn't just mean physical, it means also the mind, keeping our mind coming back to Krishna, keeping attentive to the purpose of our life, the purpose of why we're doing everything. If it's just physical engagement and our consciousness is not linked to Krishna, then we may work very hard and very nicely, but it will come to the point where we think, why am I doing this? So therefore, we have to stay in touch with Krishna consciousness and the spiritual level. Keep our mind engaged in hearing and chanting, so that we can always be reminded as to why we're engaging in this process, why we're restricting ourselves, this process of sadhana bhakti. It's described as the means by which we can attain something. So it's like training, but the training is also the same as the method is the same as the destination, the result. So what we're doing now is the same as what the devotees are doing in the spiritual world. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smarnam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Sakyam, Dasyam, Atmanivedanam. These different things are there in the spiritual world, but the only difference is, and we're in the spiritual world by doing that, we just haven't realized it yet. If we continue doing it, Lord Brahma says that it becomes the devotee's rightful claim if we patiently bear the reactions to our past deeds, happiness and distress, patiently bear it, don't try to make big endeavors to avoid, then in due course of time, everything will be burnt up, the good karma and the bad karma. Often people just want to rid themselves of their pap, their sinful desire or the sinful activity, the sinful reaction. But unless we uproot the spirit of enjoyment, we're simply going to do the same thing again anyway. So we may even be successful to remove the sinful reaction, but if we're going to do the same thing again, just like one may be doing something which is causing a disease, you get the medicine and you cure it, but you keep doing the same thing, then the doctor's going to say, why do you keep doing this? You know you're going to get that disease again. So this is like us. We have, and in Kali Yuga, because we have short memory, then it's even more difficult for us to make progress because we keep forgetting. The material desires block our memory, and just by default of Kali Yuga, we're short of memory. Therefore, we have to keep on reminding ourselves. Hoksha made a nice point in class the other day. We chant Hare Krishna so many times, they say, well, if you just chant Hare Krishna once purely, that can burn up more sins than you're able to commit. So you can say, well, I'll just chant Hare Krishna once and that's it. But was it purely? And if it comes to the point, so we keep on chanting in the hope that we can chant one name pure with full attention without any motivation, because it's so deep-rooted, our motivation, we cannot fathom it. If we just chant one name, what we'll experience from that will encourage us to continue chanting, not like we say, oh, that's great, that was a pure holy name, now I don't need to chant anymore. I'll go back to enjoying. Then it wouldn't have been very pure. Kabhi Habib bolo se dinama. When will that day be mine? Taste for them increasing, aparada gucci sudanamaruchi. Taste for them increasing, all offences ceasing. When, oh when, in my heart will your mercy shine? When, oh when will that day be mine? So the devotees is They're praying like that. And this is the mood that we can also approach when we're in kirtan, when we're chanting. When will I give up my self-comforting? When will I be able to experience the nectar of the name? And Krishna is not some sense object to be enjoyed. But the trick is that by serving Krishna, we automatically enjoy. But because we're foolish, we think, well, let me enjoy first. And then once my enjoyment is satisfied, then I can serve. But it doesn't work like that. We can keep trying, but Krishna won't change the rules for us. The rules are the rules because they're natural. It's a natural order of things. And what we're doing is unnatural. In this material world, we're behaving unnaturally. And Srila Prabhupada calls this our second nature. You hear this expression, oh, it's second nature to do this. In other words, we've created a habit, but it's not our first nature. But the second nature is so deep-rooted that we're convinced of it. And the regular hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam is to convince us otherwise. That no, this conditioned nature is not your real nature. It's not bringing you what you're looking for. But the Krishna consciousness lifestyle will bring what we're looking for. We just have to be patient and perform it properly. We can be patient, but if we're not performing it properly, then we have to be patient for a lot longer. So therefore, reading Prabhupada's books, all of them, and then reading them again, and reading them again, this is so important for us. It's important for us to hear. One person used to say, if you don't hear, sometime you won't be here. So we have to be always subjecting our consciousness to hearing that Shabda Brahma, the transcendental sound vibration. I was quite encouraged the other day. I went down to Krunabhavan and Jayananda Prabhu was in the room 15 and 16, decorating there, doing some work. And I heard he was playing Srila Prabhupada's japa tape. I was thinking, oh, this is nice. Listening to the holy name coming from the authorized source. So by listening to Srila Prabhupada's japa, then this is very purifying for us. That's why every day during japa we put on the tape of Prabhupada chanting. He's chanting with us. We used to actually have around Krunabhavan before we moved everything up here, before we had this place up at the top of the hill. We used to have Prabhupada bhajans playing around Krunabhavan 24 hours daily. And we were thinking to revive that up here, get some speaker and have Prabhupada bhajans playing all the time. And it creates such a spiritual atmosphere. What it does for your mind, your mind, instead of latching onto this or that, then it's always it's like wearing down the stone. The stone is very hard, but the water is soft, and you think, well, if you throw a stone into the water, it disrupts it. But ultimately, if you keep running the water over the stone, if it's jagged, in due course it'll be all smooth. Sometimes you see that. On a river, you see stones which are worn very smoothly over a long period of time. So by this constant hearing, then our stone-like heart can be softened. It can be once again connected with the Lord. So this Bhagavad Dharma is known as Sarvat Kritsna, the best of all religious systems, because the devotees are not envious of anyone. It's not that we're just happy that someone joins our club. It's like, oh, good, we've got another member in the club. Or that they're happy we've got, they say, security in numbers, right? Sometimes you see that with herds or flocks. They have some security in numbers. Even you get these fishes, in order to deter predators, they may be small, but they come together in a big group and they give the impression that there's a big being there, so that predators may stay out the way. And they move in such a way it looks like it's one big thing. So, of course, in Krishna consciousness, Then the association of devotees is security in numbers. But it's not just numbers. It's not just because it's not like we have started the Santa Claus Club and because we all convince each other that Santa Claus exists and we don't hear about anything else, then we believe something like that. That we're protecting each other from the effects of Maya, and we're reminding each other of Krishna. And because Krishna is pure, we're becoming purified by being reminded of Krishna time and time again. Sometimes we're being reminded, sometimes we're reminding. So this is the nature of association of devotees. And we're happy for anyone. An example of that would be, you can find this in the science of self-realization. There was one priest who had met Srila Prabhupada in Germany, and he was so impressed by Srila Prabhupada, he says, "What should I do? Should I come and follow you now?" And Prabhupada says, "No, you just preach God consciousness from where you are." So we could see this is not a sectarian thing. If it was sectarian, Prabhupada would just say yes to everybody, come on, join. And even with George Harrison was prepared to shave up and take initiation. And Prabhupada says, "You're already son of Hari, Hari's son." Because he understood that he could still do that service that he's going to do without having to take initiation, without having a devotee name and shaved up. He could do so much service in his circumstances. Grihitako banitako natake janjal. That whether we're a grihasta or whether we're living in the forest or in the ashram as a renunciant, then we can still equally serve the Lord. It doesn't matter. Lord Chaitanya, many of his associates had jobs. They were grihastas, but they were eternally liberated souls. They were pure devotees. They weren't any less than those who were sannyasis or brahmacharis. So it's all about what we can offer to the Lord. And it's all about keeping everything in our consciousness related to the Lord. Sometimes we're having to work to maintain a family, but we're maintaining a family. Why? Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, if it weren't for the fact that my family are devotees, then I wouldn't see the point in maintaining them. But because they are, then he would work to maintain them all. And of course, one of his sons was Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the grandfather of the Hare Krishna movement. So this is coming from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So of course, it's natural that a devotee is looking at others thinking they're better, and this is the right way. We should always be thinking that others are better. And we have to see that. We have to see the good qualities. We see the things in them which we wish that we could be like that. We don't have to swap places, but we can improve our character, and we can develop nice relationships by accepting the good in others. And the best of all religions, now you might think, oh, that sounds like a contradictory statement. You just said, that it doesn't matter what religion you follow. But it's the best of all religions because it gives clear, definitive knowledge of the process of learning to love God and how to get out of this material world. What is this material world? How are we stuck in it? How did we get here? What is this illusion that we're in? What is right? What is wrong? What is dharma? What is adharma? What is conducive? What is detrimental? It's very clear, but we don't find that elsewhere. We find some rules and regulations, but at the same time, much of what we find in the Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, we won't find anywhere else. So it's given even more. Just like you could say, we got a pocket dictionary, and it gives you a very brief meaning of a word, but you have the full unabridged version. You say this is the best dictionary. It's not different from the small one, but it's given even much more. So therefore, the Krishna consciousness movement is the benediction on the planet Earth at this point in time. So it's considered here that the devotee is therefore like the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Suridam Sarvabhutanam. He's everyone's friend. And this means that he's always trying to think how they can do that person some good. If people are envious, they might think, oh, we're just being exploited. But the devotees are, when they're selling books or they're raising funds, they're not doing it to make themselves comfortable. They're doing it to try to bring good fortune to the other living entities, to engage them in devotional service. This is the purpose. They're taking so much trouble to go out there and take Krishna consciousness to people, take some money off them so we can print more books and take it to more people, get more money off them, print more books, take it to more people. So this is the thing. This is what the Krishna consciousness movement is about. Just like yesterday, the devotees went to Glasgow and they did some university program, and on the way back they had some kirtan, and the people were coming up to them in the streets saying, "Oh, that's so good. Thanks for reminding me to be peaceful." Because people, they forget themselves. They forget to look after themselves. Even as devotees, sometimes we don't take care of ourselves, but it's important. And by doing these activities, we're reminding people that they have a duty of care to themselves, which is their spiritual care. Even if materially one is bereft of opulences, if one is satisfied spiritually, then one is not in a difficult situation. So whereas Prabhupada said so-called religions are meant for a particular type of person or believes in a particular type of way, so these kind of restrictions, they're just creating separatist mentality. And he talks about scrutinizing the Kaitava Dharma, or the religions which are materially motivated. They're full of envy because they simply want to enjoy the kingdom of God without God. Pray to God to get some gift from Him so we can enjoy separately from Him. That's not very nice. But Krishna is so detached that it doesn't bother him. He's compassionate because he's just thinking, when will they come back to me and enjoy properly? So therefore this Krishna consciousness movement is unique, and we won't find anything like it elsewhere. So we'd just like to stop there. Anyone get any comment or questions?
Why then Krishna kind of sanctions these many forms of religions which create contradictions and lead to envy?
Because we want it. So just like Prabhupada was being interviewed by one reporter, and he was talking about different gurus, and Prabhupada, you could tell by the reporter's tone that he wasn't very favorable towards the different gurus and swamis and yogis, mystics, who were cheating the youth of America back in the 60s, taking advantage of their search for knowledge, etc. And Prabhupada, so he said, "What do you think of this Swami?" And he said, he's a nonsense. And he said, "What about this one?" He said, "He's also bogus." "What about this one?" "He's another nonsense." And he says, "Oh, because my son follows him," and he says, "and he's a bigger nonsense." He says, one is, if worse than the person who's misleading is the one who's following, because if there's no one to follow, then who can mislead? It's about supply and demand, isn't it? If nobody wants to buy such and such item from the supermarket, then they can't sell it, they can't make it, there's no market for it. But because people want to be cheated, then Krishna says, "Okay, you want to be cheated? Here's a cheater for you." But even if one is in amongst cheats, if one is sincere, they won't be deterred, they won't be fooled by them. I was just speaking with Pip the other day, and he was telling me that he was surrounded by some people who were involved in some kind of bogey yogi type of association, but he wasn't buying it. But when he came to Krishna consciousness, then he found what he's looking for. So therefore, it's up to the individual. You can't blame a cheater for misleading people. People want to be misled. If they want to just sell themselves short and just cash in for the first thing that comes along, then they may just get the reputation of being called sheep, blind followers. And Prabhupada was never fond of encouraging blind following. We should scrutinizingly study the scriptures, and we should pose questions to the authorities, not challenging questions, because we should always be asking questions, but not in the spirit of challenging. Is that okay? ISKCON Guru ki, Shri Prabhupada ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki.